no, it's a question of what the balance is, right? It will be personal to the degree that she'll say you're a convicted felon and he'll say you're a Marxist, and we know all that. Mm-hmm. But it's about where the overall balance of that debate is. And Harris's weakness is if you get her off script on economics and other issues, she's literally got nothing to say.
As we begin with the latest idea to deal with the crisis in our overcrowded prisons that's being floated, and that is to send inmates to Estonia, a country which has a low crime rate, such a low crime rate, in fact, their prisons are only half full. Dame Angela Eagle, Minister of State for Border Security, told Times Radio Breakfast that they are keeping their options open.
We've inherited a system that's on the verge of collapse. The previous government closed a lot of prison places and didn't build new ones. Therefore, the system is extremely overcrowded, and I'm sure my colleagues in the MOJ are considering anything to ensure that that prisoners who are convicted of crimes can be properly incarcerated.
Number 10 says the government has made no such plans or announcements with regard to Estonia. Something of a non-denial denial. Tory leadership candidate Robert Jenrick told Talk Radio Labour aren't straining every sinew to resolve the issues with prison capacity.
I accept this is a difficult issue because there is capacity constraints in our prisons right now. But it does feel to me as if, for ideological reasons, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are quick to release people. Are they straining every sinew to find extra capacity in our prisons? Are they thinking of any alternative, any creative solution? You know, they said there was no capacity in the prisons, and then when we had the riots the other day, they found 500 extra places. Yeah. And that suggests to me they are too fast to pull the lever of releasing dangerous people onto our streets. Right. But I want us to be building more prisons. Right. I want us to be locking up more hyper-prolific offenders. Absolutely. Keep the public safe.
I'm joined now by the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. Good afternoon, Mr. Farage.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining me on Times Radio Drive. Can I just start by asking you for your immediate reaction when you heard of this plan?
Just to say that this represents failure by successive governments to understand, in this and many other areas, the implications of an exploding population in terms of numbers due to mass immigration policies. We just have more people in this country, and therefore, logically, we have more criminals. So it's failure to plan, but we have the same argument about housing, about water supplies, about anything.
So you just put this in the same bracket?
There could be one upside here, though. Mm-hmm. The one upside could be it may be cheaper to keep people in Estonia than it is to keep them in British prisons. That's the one little ray of light. But look, we don't need to do this. There can be plenty of room in British prisons. It's very, very easy. We have approximately 10,000 foreign nationals in British prisons. Deport them, and we'll then have a lot of room.
But of course, there's a problem with that. It's not just as straightforward as deporting them, is it, Mr. Farage? Otherwise, they'd have done
it. Quite frankly, I think it's very straightforward. Yeah, we deport people who are serving in our prisons who are foreign nationals. I don't see any reason. I don't see anything to stop us from doing that.
Can I just move on, just in terms of the prison crisis? And you'll know that the wife of a Conservative Party councillor is currently on remand after she admitted writing on X. And I think this is an edit, right? Mass deportation now. Set fire to all the hotels full for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it. Now, Lucy Connolly has been told to expect a lengthy jail term. Before I go any further, I'm just going to be very unequivocal about this and say that this was racist incitement to whip up hatred towards asylum seekers. There's no bones about it. It's a serious crime and she deserves to be punished. But can I just ask you, is it right that she will be jailed and will not have her sentence reduced, because we know those convicted of any offences regarding the riots will not have their sentence reduced, while others who have, and there is going to be a proportion of them, have committed violent offences in some cases, are going to be among the 2,000 released early to free up places for individuals like Lucy Connolly?
Well, look, we're going to have 5,500 prisoners released over the course of September and October, including some who've committed violent offences, sexual offences, and nearly all of them will have served 40% or less of their sentences. So if you have one rule for one type of crime, but then another for anything related to the riots, well, you've got not just two-tier policing on the streets, but two-tier justice. And all that's going to do is make the great British public even angrier than they are at the moment. They think what is going on is unfair. They think British citizens get frankly put to the back of the line with everything. So no, I don't approve of these proposals at all.
Can I just, there's one thing you said there, which from what we understand from the government isn't correct. And that's when it comes to, we do know there is it's not going to be as simple as ensuring that no violent offender or nobody who's been convicted of a violent offence is released. But the government has said that nobody convicted of sexual offences as well as terrorism will be released early as part of this scheme. I know that you might, are you disputing that, or do you have some different knowledge?
They're saying is that nobody, I think what they're saying is that nobody convicted of extreme cases such as rape will be released, but other sexual offenders will be released. But I mean, let's not split hairs. We're letting out 5,500 people early. We're sending a message that if you commit crimes in this country, frankly, you're not going to be seriously punished. We haven't built enough prisons. We haven't planned ahead. And yet, if you've said something really nasty on Facebook or elsewhere...
And you condemn that, right? You condemn that?
Yes, I condemn
what Lucy
it.
Connolly said was racist.
You know something? I think crimes of violence against the person, we should not be letting people out early. Simple as that.
Just staying with migration, can we just move away to, well, it's a contentious topic, but it relates to Keir Starmer and this youth mobility scheme that's being proposed by European EU nations in return for granting free movement of goods, especially to try and reduce the paperwork for companies that trade frequently and at speed with partners in the European Union. Is it your view that any youth mobility scheme is a return to free movement, or do you think it can be done in a way that actually would meet any demands that you might have to honour the 2016 Brexit referendum result?
No, it would be a retrograde step. And of course, as with all of these situations, we'd finish up with many more people coming to our country than going in the other direction. We've seen that pattern for decades now with any kind of deal that we do. So no, we shouldn't be doing this. I can see Tony Blair and the Remainers, the Rejoiners, pushing very hard for it. When it comes to the difficulties of trade, I find the whole thing incredible. I mean, you've got Canada and the United States of America, which have different rules on many things, and yet goods move freely across the Canadian-American border in a digitized age in the most extraordinary way. And I'm afraid what we're really coming down to is that the Brexit deal that we signed up to was a very, very bad deal designed to make us unhappy and to make us rethink membership of the Union.
But you accept that within those four pillars of the, and you spent many years as an MEP. You accept within those four pillars that the EU always say, and they say it with their orange juice and croissant over breakfast. these are non-divisible. You can't have free movement of goods without having free movement of people.
Well, it's absolute nonsense, and nothing like that has ever happened before in the world. Free trade is about removing barriers. Free trade is about removing tariffs. Free trade is about making it easy to do business. And all over the world, people negotiate these deals without free movement of people being any part of the equation. So, look,
but the EU want to ensure that they have their standards, and of course, and Donald Trump isn't president yet, we can come on to what you think about Mr. Trump's chances in November in a moment. But if you end up in a situation where we have a trade deal with the United States and you have food produce from the United States coming into this country, and there are not checks at the border, then the EU's fear is that they could end up in it being sold, or parts could end up being sold in the European Union, and they're saying that they don't want that. Isn't that their right?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, the free trade deal with America will not include the free movement of people. It might respect reciprocal qualifications and things like that, but certainly not free movement. Look, the European Union may well be stuck with its incredibly outdated ideas, but it's perhaps just worth us remembering, even though things aren't great in the United Kingdom, when it comes to growth, when it comes to many other markers, we are doing much, much better than those countries. They have some very outdated ideas, but business is business.
When you say business is business, business is saying it wants faster trade with the EU, Mr. Farage.
Yeah, business Business is saying it wants fewer regulations.
Yeah.
Business is it wants to make it easy to trade with the rest of the world. Let's just remind ourselves, the European Union, the Eurozone economy is 15% of the world's economy. There's a lot of other things to think about other than trade with Europe, though I accept that we've made, trade with Europe has been made more difficult than it needed to be.
But it's our closest partner. I mean, United States, I get it. You say you want closer trading relationships with the United States, but the East Coast is 3,000 miles away. Calais is 24 miles from Dover.
So what? That's absolute rot. The world's a very small place. Look at the vast amount of goods that come in to containers into ports in this country, ships carrying 22,000 containers. Geography, when you can move stuff by sea, means very little anymore.
But crossing the Atlantic is a much longer journey than it is to cross 24 miles of the English Channel. I mean, demonstrably it is going to take much longer to trade in large bulk with the United States. Otherwise, we would have done it before now.
No. We are trading in huge bulk with China already. That is the point. Now, clearly, when it comes to perishables, we're talking about something slightly different. But hard, heavy, big goods, including motor cars and many other things, frankly, a few miles across sea doesn't really make very much difference. And also, I'd remind you that, too, in a digitized world and a world where services, which, of course, are so important for the United Kingdom, these things are done at the press of a button.
Just moving on, there's going to be a vote next week in the House of Commons on the winter fuel allowance, the planned cuts by the government. Are you planning to vote against that?
Yes, I am, and I'll tell you why. Whilst I get the argument that some pensioners don't need the money, but I also know that means testing is quite an expensive thing to do. I feel a bit sorry for people on fixed incomes. Yeah. The reason being they already have the most expensive energy bills in the Western world. Our electricity prices already far higher than anybody else's. And let me promise you, from what Ed Miliband gave us in the House of Commons today, with the strike prices that have been agreed for 171 wind farm projects, our fuel prices are going up over the course of the next 10 years in quite a big way.
Why did you say that? Sorry. I mean, it seems...
Because of the sheer economic impossibility of what the Labour government are trying to do. It will not work. And indeed, the last wind farm auction 11 months ago, not a single bid was received because the strike price offered was at market prices. We are having to pay way more than market prices to get wind farms built. And as you know, it's an intermittent form of energy that needs a lot of backup. No question. Energy bills are going up. And for that reason, pensioners need to keep the allowance.
But just as you're a political party now, you must have a counter policy. What is it?
Oh, absolutely. We do not think that we should be importing gas from overseas. We do, of course, bring in huge amounts these days from America and Qatar. We should be producing our own gas, which would definitely give us cheaper prices.
Well, fracking?
Yes, fracking and many other ways of doing it.
It leads to earthquakes, though.
Oh, yeah. If you believe the Russian propaganda, it certainly does. But if you look at what fracking has done for the American economy, it's unbelievable. I mean, think about this. In 2008, the size of the American economy was exactly the same size as the European Union's.
But America's vast. America's vast. You can do fracking in America and, you've got one house to worry about that might suffer a shudder. If you do fracking in the northeast of England, indeed, I think a Tory peer once proposed it, that, you could have a fracking, you could do fracking in the north of England, and communities were up in arms. Indeed, the last government, when they proposed it, received such a backlash from communities that they were quickly had to remove all of the licenses.
In 2008, the American economy was exactly the same size as the European economy. Today, it is double the size. Just think about that. And the shale gas revolution has completely changed everything in America. They pay half for their gas prices than we do. And that knocks on, of course, through manufacturing and everything else. No, any form of extractive industry has to be done sensibly and carefully. But there is no doubt that Russian propaganda spent a huge amount of money to poison the minds of the British people against our own gas production. I believe we should be as self-sufficient in oil and gas as we possibly could be. We absolutely should be producing coal that is needed in the steel industry. We should not be closing down all primary steel manufacture, certainly at a time like this. And look, I've got no problem with wind farms, provided they're not subsidized by the taxpayer. But I'm afraid the proposals this government have put forward are going to put a lot of money on people's bills.
Nigel Farage, I know it's going to be a busy autumn for you. You've got your conference coming up. Are you expecting any defections from the Conservative Party to Reform UK, namely Suella Braverman?
I haven't been trying. I'm not really interested.
Why do you say that?
To me that, because Conservatives spend their lives hating each other and fighting each other. I want to try and build a unified party that believes in something. And if there are some Conservatives who are prepared to put behind them all that petty infighting, then fine. But I'm not spending any of my time, or any of my effort doing it. Frankly, what I've been doing for the last month and a half, above all, is building a national political structure for reform so that we can fight elections in all of the years to come. That's my main focus.
Do you have ambitions to be Prime Minister?
I have ambitions for reform to be the biggest party at the next general election.
But you have to bring in the Tories. You have to do something with the Tories to get to that position, don't you? Or you think you can somehow get reform to the biggest party without the Conservative support? It just doesn't seem to add up.
Well, no, nothing I've ever done's added up. Fighting to leave the European Union didn't add up. There are many unlikely things that happen in the world of politics. Look, we've just finished a general election. You know, I'm laying out a 5-year plan with a very, very capable, competent young businessman called Zia Youssef, who's now chairman of the party, and we are building a national political party. And whatever happens, happens. But I do think this. I do think that the growth of reform, if it happens in the way that I believe it can, will come at the expense of the Labour Party, not the Conservatives.
And you would, if you win that, if you won that election, you would want to be Prime Minister. You want to lead this country.
Well, I mean, Theo, you know, yes, if it's me, but who knows? By then, somebody younger and better looking than me may have come along. You know, we're right at the beginning of a 5-year project, and I think even little samples of weekly by-elections that take place on district councils up and down the country are showing that reform that actually is doing well since the election, that we have a membership that is growing very, very quickly. No, we are very much on the up.
Just while you're with us, Michel Barnier, he's become French Prime Minister. Is this good news for Keir Starmer and his leadership? You remember him, of course, from the Brexit years.
Don't remind me. All those years in the European Parliament with Barnier, and he's back. I suspect that Keir Starmer initially will think, well, this is a very good thing. We've got a friend as French Prime Minister, but don't underestimate Barnier. He is a very, very wily negotiator, and he will absolutely insist, along with his friends in Brussels, that any relaxing of the rules.
You think you'll think he won't give Starmer what he wants? You think he won't give our Prime Minister what he wants?
He will not give our Prime Minister what he wants at all, and he'll find out that any compact on migration will finish up with us taking more into our country than we remove, and he'll find out that, you know, getting more sensible trade rules will mean free movement slowly creeping in. So I don't think this is going to be quite as straightforward as many in the Labour camp think it is.
And just finally, Donald Trump, he's got that debate next week with Kamala Harris. Can I just ask you, do you think he will be able to dispatch with the new Democrat nominee in the same way that, Joe Biden didn't? He didn't even have to lay a glove on him because Joe Biden couldn't communicate properly.
I really hope that what happens on the 10th with this debate...
Are you going over for it, by the way?
I don't think I am, because I think we might be voting in the House of Commons on the winter fuel allowance.
Right, yes, of course, it's the same answer.
I really think ought to, as I'm sitting here in Clacton talking to you...
You wanted to go, but the parliamentary timetable wouldn't allow it.
Well, you know, I had a big decision to make. I stood in a general election. My priority has to be to where I am today in Clacton and to those that voted for us. So, yes, they have to come first. It's a very important debate. It needs to be policy focused. And I very much want Trump to be out on the front foot, talking about his record, talking about the fact that he kept the promises that he made as president, which strikes me as being important, and laying out in economic and strategic terms, not just what America's future is, but how he sees it for the Western world. And I just hope he focuses on that more than attacking Kamala Harris. She, so far...
You think
has
it's important because you're saying don't go personal, but Donald Trump, every time you put a microphone in front of his face, he seems to go personal with those attacks. And you're saying he needs to be policy-based.
Well, no, it's a question of what the balance is, right? It will be personal to the degree that she'll say you're a convicted felon and he'll say you're a Marxist, and we know all that. But it's about where the overall balance of that debate is. And Harris's weakness is if you get her off script on economics and other issues, she's literally got nothing to say. If Trump's going to win this election, it will be on policy, not on personality, in my view.
Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, thank you very much for joining us on
Thank you.
Times Radio.